Good morning, class. It's drop everything and read time, so get out of those books and get to reading. We got 15 minutes. Yes! Joel, why is your book upside down? Why can't you read nicely like the girls? Her book's the right way up, Joel. You know, never mind. Let's get to class. Boys in my class are just the worst at deer time. 15 minutes in. 15 minutes in. And then I realized that Joel had his book upside down. I just think this is another example of boys' anti-school culture.
I've been noticing this culture of underachievement as well. I recently read this article by Rickard Johnson, and he talked about Paul Willis' 1977 theory, and it said that to perform well in school is simply not the same as performing cool masculinity.
No way! I came across an article by Laura Schultz that discussed how reading in school was seen as a criteria or a benchmark for demarcating uncool students. This was especially relevant with a boy's commitment to reading and schoolwork as it challenged their masculinity.
Wait a minute. Why is this culture of underachievement relevant?
Well, Janet Mulvey says in The Feminization of Schools that statistically, boys are performing less well than they were 10 years ago. Boys dropping out of high schools in significant numbers, failing to complete college degrees, and behaving more violently. We should pay close attention to the statistics that track these trends, seriously regard the research, and immediately incorporate changes into our elementary and secondary schools to bring boys back into an environment that motivates them to learn at their fullest. The number of boys enrolling in colleges and universities nationwide is declining.
Yeah, plus the National Center for Educational Statistics just released PISA scores that show a gap in achievement between boys and girls. Here, have a look.
Plus, if our goal as professional educators is to get all students ready for the future, we need to think about the boys as well as the girls.
So what can we do about that?
I think we need more male teachers in schools.
We need to have boy-friendly books.
I think that we need to fight the feminization of schools.
Those all sound good, but are we homogenizing boys by trying to teach them all the same way?
These are all tough questions. Let's do some research and come back to it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Remember yesterday when we were talking about more male teachers? I did some more research, and an article called More Male Primary School Teachers, Social Benefits for Boys and Girls argued that they will act as role models, father figures for boys, and be someone that they can relate to, confide in, and seek help from, especially in relation to things like puberty. For girls, it also helps them relate to men and contribute to their development of self-image, as well as mothers perceive the lack of male teachers as making girls fearful of men because they do not know how to interact with them.
On the other hand, Christine Skelton said that children themselves do not perceive any differences between teachers based on the teacher's gender. Children evaluate teachers on the basis of how well they explain the work, provide interesting lessons, use practical approaches to teaching and learning, effectively manage the class, and appear to genuinely be interested in them rather than on whether they are male or female. What primary-age children focus on is the professional sameness of teachers by pointing out that it does not matter what gender the teacher is if they teach the same thing in the same ways.
Plus, aren't we just homogenizing all male teachers as being the same if we do that? The ATA released an article saying that boys who have male teachers do not have fewer problems than in school and are not better adjusted than other boys.
I read that article too. In short, it simply said that hiring more male teachers is not going to improve boys' achievement unless we ask which men.
In considering this question, we need to reflect on what it means to be an excellent teacher. In other words, all students, male and female, need to have excellent teachers all of the time.
So male teachers are not a homogeneous group.
Each male teacher brings a different performance of masculinity to the classroom. This strategy, however, usually assumes a traditional view of masculinity and is very unwelcoming of non-traditional males.
I think that shows the problem can't be solved by just having more male teachers. What were our other ideas?
I still think that teachers can bring boy-friendly books into the classroom to engage boys in literacy activities. The ATA website shows the 2001 and 2002 results of the Education Quality and Accountability Office, which indicated that boys prefer action-oriented or information books over storybooks, and tend to reject certain literary forms such as poetry and fiction.
The difficulty is that one cannot conclude from the data that all boys prefer action-oriented books and information books and that no boys like to read things like poetry or fiction.
Yeah, like my favorite book right now is The Girl Who Invented Romance by Carolyn B. Cooney. We split. Wendy went back to the Jeep.
Okay.
Anyway, leaping to conclusions about boys' books and girls' books is short-sighted in several ways. First, differences between boys and between girls and girls are just as significant as the differences between boys and girls. Second, many of the choices being made take into account traditional notions of masculinity only and ignore other ways of expressing masculinity.
However, by choosing books based on stereotypical enactments of gender, students learn that doing literacy is closely associated with doing masculinity, constructing a rigid binary between what are deemed appropriate male books and what are deemed appropriate female books, and perpetuating fixed gender identities. Therefore, by having choices based on stereotypical notions of masculinity, accept without question that violence and physical aggressiveness are normative behaviors for males. Laura Scholes argues that we need to make schoolwork and reading constructed as non-gendered, so boys will have a tendency to read more. Furthermore, strategies will work to reduce constructions of gender differences are also effective in facilitating higher achievement for boys in general.
Exactly. By providing stereotypically boy-friendly books, we are falling into the trap of homogenizing all boys again. I've read a couple of things about combating the feminization of schools in order to end the anti-school culture of boys. Passive learning styles are feminine. That is what is being done in schools, like having a lecture, listening in class, sitting in class, and always having to sit down to do your work. We need to make classrooms places where boys can be boys and do the things that boys like to do.
That's true. For example, in the feminization of schools, Janet Mulvey says that instead of building with blocks, handling manipulatives, and being active in kindergarten classes, boys are expected to sit on the carpet, listen to stories, and write their letters in a coherent form. The inability to explore and design with their natural spatial capabilities not only frustrates but discourages boys right from the beginning of their school careers.
I read that article too. They said that when you enter almost any elementary school classroom, you will notice the neat tables with crayons, large lined writing paper, and picture books. Buried in the back of the room are the blocks, the interlocking logs, and other materials that engage young male minds in creative and imaginative play. The location of these materials immediately sets the tone that designates what is most important in the classroom.
I'm seeing a problem with his argument. We're homogenizing boys as being all the same again. In Rickard Johnson's article, he argues that when the concept of boys' anti-school culture is used as both the master narrative and the unquestioned point of departure in explaining boys' attitudes and behaviors in schools, this neglects to see the intricacies and complexities of boys' identities, strategies, and cultures in the school.
It seems like we're coming to the same reasoned judgment. The best way for schools to combat the anti-school culture of boys is to not treat all boys as being the same.
Many of the arguments we originally came up with seem to group all boys into the same category. Having male teachers homogenizes all teachers who are male as being the same and offering the same features to their students. It also assumes that boys need a male role model in schools.
Yeah, and when we talked about having more boy-friendly books, we assumed that all boys like the same kind of books, like action books. This grouping of all boys into the same group, when in reality we know that boys have many different ideas, preferences, and interests, just seems ridiculous.
Exactly. And when we assume that schools are feminized and that they need to be turned into masculine spaces, we assume that all boys will benefit from a single idea of what masculinity is. If we suggest that classrooms should have blocks and active learning at the forefront, are we assuming that all boys do best in this environment, once again homogenizing them?
It seems like the only way to help boys' achievement and culture in school is to treat all of them like individuals. We need to build relationships with each student so that we know their interests and the best way to meet their needs.
So we should apply what we've learned here today in our classrooms. Make it better.
Let's do it!
Good morning, class. It's drop everything and read time. Now I know that Dear Time hasn't been working for everyone, so I got a whole bunch of different books with different interests for everyone. So we got books on origami, we got books on all sorts of things. There's adventure books, there's hockey books, there's sports books, there's all sorts of books. So come on up, grab one that suits your interests.
Origami! I love origami! This is so awesome!
Hey, Greek mythology. Dope.
Hockey! I love hockey! Yeah!